Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, the show here on Let's Talk Entertainment. We're going back to 2018. I've been attempting to read and review each of the roughly 600 short stories written by the late, great Ray Bradbury. Today we are up to story number 252, which also happens to be the 13th of 22 short stories in his 2009 collection, We'll Always Have Paris. Today's story is Fly Away Home, and interestingly enough, it is a science fiction story, an old school science fiction story. Haven't read one of them in a long while, and it feels like it could have been part of the Martian Chronicles. However, it wasn't. All right, then. So the way that these reviews work is I do a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, just sort of the plot and the character, and then sort of wrap it up with a very brief analysis of what it all means, what it means to me, what I took away from it. Was it a good story? Was it worth your time? Was it worth my time to read? All right, then. So we start with the scene that is a relief rocket, a secondary rocket being loaded hastily with a lot of equipment and supplies and people to follow the primary rocket, which had set off for Mars with 30 men on board the day earlier. We quickly catch up with that primary rocket, and they land on Mars, and almost immediately, upon arriving, realizing how far they are from home and how dead the planet is, they begin to feel homesick, and one particular man, Smith, becomes very, very depressed in a hurry and must be confined to bed rest on board the rocket. They begin to think, that is the captain and the crew psychiatrist, that perhaps this was a bad idea. Perhaps man was not intended to travel this far from home. But they begin going to work. They pitch their tents and they start doing their tasks and their chores. Living a very Spartan frontier life. When basically the captain decides that if it doesn't get any better, we have to leave within 24 hours. But then, lo and behold, they see a light in the sky. It is the approach of the secondary rocket, which soon enough arrives, lands, and opens up and reveals all that is brought on board. Much to the amazement of the crew of 30, they see that a town has been hastily erected, complete with saloon and barbershop and soda fountains and theaters and all the amenities of home. But some of the buildings are actually fully intact, operational buildings, but there's also some buildings that are indicated to be like facades, like on a movie set. And very quickly, everybody's feeling so much better, and the captain sort of remarks to the psychiatrist, what is this? And he said, well, it was top secret, couldn't tell anyone because it was very, very expensive to put all this together, but I've taken people and bits and pieces of stories from the hometowns of all these men on our crew, brought them here so that they would feel a piece of home here on Mars, and hopefully that would make them less homesick and make them happy and okay with their existence and preserve their sanity. And then the captain says, do you think this would help Smith? Will you bring him into town? And we should try it. So as the story's ending, they reveal that the captain, a psychiatrist, and a third man, presumably Smith, has been brought into town, and they're having drinks and they're having fun, and looks like Smith is feeling better. All right, so this is a very delightful story. It could have easily been part of the Martian Chronicles written in the 50s. However, it was not. It feels like it's right out of the 50s. I'm not sure when the story was actually written. All the stories in this collection, Will Always Have Paris, are said to have been first published in 2009 with the collection, but it's unclear what year some of them were written. Some of them were obviously newer creations of Bradbury, but I could probably guess that maybe this one been percolating a little bit, been in his archives perhaps in some draft form, and then he brought it out, because it doesn't show any of the indications of being a modern story, just the way that he refers to rockets and the whole situation. It feels very much retro sci-fi, unless perhaps he decided intentionally to do that even later in life. So there is that opportunity, or that possibility. The story is really at its heart about pioneers entering the wilderness and their need for a home. I think explorers have this desire to go, and even the hardiest people, who think that I'm going to conquer wilderness and I'm going to see new sights. But even those people, sometimes when they get there, when the journey is over, the journey perhaps was the best part, but they feel homesick. And so then when they get there, there's a desire for a sense of home, and this is what the characters, in fact, brought with them. The psychiatrist, sort of understanding human psychology, knew that they would need a piece of home to keep them sane. But it also, I think it says, in a way, the thing about colonizers the world over, across all time, is that they tend to bring their own civilization and try to transplant it into the new location, sometimes at the risk of the locals. In the case of Mars here, there's no surviving Martians. It sort of indicates that there was Martians, but they're not there anymore. So they're not really interrupting anybody's existence. However, in a real world situation, oftentimes, as I was saying, people bring their world and they try to transplant it into new locations, and it often leads to very deadly, disastrous circumstances. But in the best of times, it could lead to the blending of civilizations, the blending of cultures, which is a good thing. So there's good and bad with all exploration and this sort of inborn human desire to spread out and to see new things and to adventure and to expand, which I think, we're getting closer and closer to that time here in our own world. Mars has never seemed closer, but ultimately we're going to have to bring some parts of home with us, hopefully the best parts, but hopefully we also manage to leave the worst parts of us behind here on Earth. And then maybe we can learn from if people prosper peacefully on Mars, maybe we can learn something from them back here on Earth to sort of fix our situations, which are always turbulent. So there you have it, a very delightful story, Fly Away Home. I highly recommend it. Find this story now, read it, especially if you're into classic Ray Bradbury 50s retro future sci-fi. It's a great story. It should be a lot more famous than it is. However, it is not, but hopefully this video would do a small part to help expand its reach. So next time we'll be looking at a story called Unpillow Talk, which will be story number 14 of 22 in this collection as we wind our way towards the end. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Please check out this story, and I'll see you again soon.